In a world within our world, they've created a world unlike any other world.
Dungeons and Dragons. And a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special.
The ogre is amused by your joke and allows you to pass.
Dad, I'm just curious. What is it about Dungeons and Dragons that suddenly leapt out at you at age 60?
Dungeons, it'd be the dungeons.
Just what I love about role-playing games is being told exactly what to do.
Me too. You should introduce yourselves.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to 93.3 CFRU. My name is Mike the Birdman, and you are listening to The Spellbook, the show that is dedicated to the tabletop role-playing game hobby, whether you're rolling them bones in the lands of Dungeons and Dragons, exploring Golarion in Pathfinder, or perhaps marching across the battlefield of the 31st century in a walking, stompy robot known as a battle mech. That's what we're here for. But I'm not alone as I trek through making our games a little bit different. I'm joined from the Feywild of London, Ontario, Canada.
Hi there. As I am back from gathering all of my loot stuffs, I am Damien, Magical Hack Morphic.
So yes, guys, as you heard last week, we actually took a week off due to Canada Day. Plus, I was just overwhelmed with work. I do a lot of work here in the city of Guelph, and I'm doing even more. As of this recording, I will be taking part in the CFRU PodCamp, and I'll be teaching the next generation of young broadcasters how to put together podcasts, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Actually, very brief story. Last year, our group finished so far ahead of schedule, and turns out I had a lot of geeks in my orbit, and we spent part of an afternoon discussing could Vecna take Orpheus in a fight. And some of these kids were surprisingly well read on D&D history, which I thought was surprising given their age range. I was dealing with kids I think as young as 10 to as old as 14.
Nice.
And yeah, these kids, they knew their stuff. I remember when I was a kid first learning D&D, I didn't even know the name of the Forgotten Realms continent. I didn't know the name of any of the cities. And you and I, Damien, both grew up in the era of Spellfire cards, Dragonlance novels being everywhere, and all this stuff. We came up in the era of Dritz to Orden.
But
I didn't know any of this.
To be fair, the access that we have today is leaps and bounds more than what we had when we were the same age.
Yeah, I remember, if you wanted to learn the history of any of these fictional settings, you really had to go out of your way to read the books, or maybe you were reading Dragon or Dungeon Magazine or any of the other zines that happened to exist around that time. Now we can just go to the Forgotten Realms wiki or go to Reddit or any other number of message boards or Discord servers and just get all the information, which, by the way, as of this episode, I want to send a special shout out. There's a group that started on Reddit and in the Guelph subreddit specifically, and they created a Guelph Discord server called Guelph Nerds. And I promised as I was doing a show tonight, I would give them a special shout out. So big hello to everybody in the Guelph Nerds community on Discord. You've been a wonderful set of hosts, and it is a joy and an honor to be among you. So, now that we have all those out of the way, let's talk about what we're going to be discussing today here on the Spellbook. And Damien, this is a topic that you pitched to me. You have the floor.
So yeah, today we're going to talk about making loot more impactful in your game. Now, I'm not talking give bigger, flashier weapons, more powerful items, things like that. That's all well and good. And you know what? As a player, I thoroughly enjoy getting that super uber magic weapon that is more powerful than what I was using beforehand. It's a great little dopamine. But what I like just as much, if not a little bit more, that I have found is very rare. Loot that fits my character's concept. Loot that helps tell my character's story. Um, Now, I'm sure you're kind of wondering what I mean by that. And right now, in Mike's game, I am playing an artificer. Their whole shtick, like even the concept behind them, is they want to make things. They want to create their magnum opus, if you will. So they're always on the lookout for things that they can use as material. So adding stuff like that in for your players is going to make not only them be more excited about, getting loot and seeing what is there, it's also going to kind of make your world feel a little bit more alive and make
Yeah.
your players feel more part of it.
Yeah, because yeah, awesome. Here's your +5 Vorpal sword, or here's your Ring of Protection +3. Okay, yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't always lend to the narrative. I mean, your narrative should be more than fighting the bad guys each and every session. While again, exciting, fun, that's what you want. But unless your character is moving on from a narrative standpoint, you're just doing dungeon crawl. Like, for example, in my friend Peter's game, he and I have discussed, I'm like, okay, yeah, there's some armor that I want, but what I really want is a ring of animal friendship. So I can talk to animals, so I can cast speak with animals or beast speech or whatever the hell the spell's called in D&D 5. And that's because I want more narrative things to do. My character's a druid. And I love the idea of just, hey, I'm going to make you do funny stories. But also at the same time, my character is bonded very closely with a winter wolf who we have named Myingen. I've actually named them after my elder who gave me my indigenous spirit name. And I want the capacity to work more with the animal kingdom. I want the capacity to grow that part of my narrative, where as a druid, you should be connected to nature. And I'm a Circle of the Moon druid,
Yeah.
which means wild shape is sort of my stock and trade. It's my bag. And I think there's a story there. And with other characters, I'm starting to learn how to make loot more impactful in my games. Like typically when I design dungeons, for example, or encounters, I will just look at a magic item chart and I'll be like, okay, what looks cool? What looks interesting? And most of the time I'm giving you tools to problem solve. But now learning that Tinker wants to do things that are a little bit more different, it's not just we're going to play for 10 sessions, we're going to kick the crap out of Vecna or Orpheus or Strahd or whatever. We're actually doing a long form campaign, and we started at level 4. And I'm thinking, okay, this group's going to keep me employed for a while because this is part of a paid DM gig that I do. This is a chance for me to run my own long running campaign with a group of people I genuinely enjoy playing with. And it's a chance to create a different narrative. Because I think in some ways, when you pitch this topic, this is not something that typically happens when you go to your friendly local game store. And again, no shade against them, but it's hard to get invested in something that's only going to last maybe 6 to 8 sessions for a couple of hours on a Saturday. You're going to scale it towards power. You're going to scale it towards this. And the problem with, playing in organized leagues like this sometimes is it's hard to find an environment where you can literally craft a story. And by having more impactful loot in your games, you're actually investing in that player's time, you're investing in that player's attention, and you want them to be connected. Because anybody can break a character. There are tons of, people on Dungeon 2, people like D&D Shorts. I love that guy. But, if you want to make a broken character, you can watch 2 or 3 videos and you'll be set. But to make a character that's narratively interesting, that you're actually invested about, if your character dies, that's much harder. And part of that is connecting narrative threads, tools, items, and things like that to the character. Like I said, I love the fact that Tinker took this thing, like in our game, to give you a peek behind the proverbial curtain, because as of this recording, the ultimate episode has happened. The finale has happened. And while I'll say this, Damien figured something out I didn't want them to very quickly, because I got a message at 2:00 in the morning saying, hey, wait a second. My item should prevent this from happening. And I'm thinking, crap, he just figured it out. Crap. And crap for crap. And I started freaking out. So I'm thinking, you figured it out. You've got the tools in your hand. And while we'll probably do a recap of our season at some point on our show. I was so glad that happened, because that's a narrative tool that Tinker had in his items inventory that pushed the narrative forward. It wasn't just a Deus Ex Machina. It was an ordinary item. They picked a character creation, and it worked into the natural weave of the story. And I think that's something that a lot of dungeon masters don't necessarily do when they're handing out items. Like in my games, I can't even remember how I came across this. I just kind of decided one day. I was like, okay, when you're building characters in my games, you can take 2 green items, which is uncommon, or 1 blue, which is rare. I haven't done anything like epics or legendaries. I'm not Overwatch or whatever. I want you to have low-level items-ish that are impactful, because even green items, depending on how you use them, are not necessarily game-breaking, but they can drive the narrative forward. For example, we have one of our players, I'm going to give them a different name. Let's call them Jason. Jason has an item that allows them to gather random information. I think it's called Mirror of the Past or something like that. Yeah. And with Jason being able to use that particular item, I can layer in so much narrative shenanigans, because in the item's description, it's like, what you see is not necessarily happening at the moment. It could be happening in the past. It could be even visions of the future, but it will always be connected to the target. So let's say they want to go spy on, I don't know, Elminster or something. They'll know something about Elminster. Maybe it could be Elminster's first day of school. Maybe it was a failed encounter with Mystara or whatever, but it's going to be something important to that character, but it doesn't necessarily have to be narrative. It's wonderful flavor. It's a role play dedicated item. And I think that's something so important.
You know, honestly, with something like that, if I was to give that item out as a piece of loot to somebody, the first time that they were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna look up like Elminster or, you know, any of the famous Forgotten Realms characters, I'd be like, okay, the first thing you see when you look into this is you see the moment of their death.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's cool.
Because then that gives them the option that, oh, hey, do I want to like try and get the rest of the party on a quest to potentially prevent this? Is this happening now? Like, it's something that, again, as you say, can help drive the plot of the world, especially for if you're aiming for a long-term campaign.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that you have to consider whenever you hand out loot. Again, being a loot goblin is awesome, but I'd rather be more invested in a story that is long in continuance, which is something we're going to have to take a brief pause here on the Spellbook right here on CFRU 93.3. My name is Mike. That is Damien. We're going to take a small break here. And when we come back, we're going to continue the course over the next 45 minutes discussing how to make loot more impactful in your games. We'll be back, guys, right after this.
Let's Get Lost is the radio program that comes to you right here on CFRU 93.3, Tuesdays, 8 till 9:30. Scott's your host for 90 minutes of music that we love, jazz-related stuff, new releases, old favorites, hopefully music that you'll find a place in your heart for.
Okay, everybody, let's get lost.
Welcome back to the Spellbook right here on 93.3 CFRU Guelph Community Radio as we talk about how you can make your loot more impactful in your game.
So before the break, Damien and I were chatting about an item that one of our players in our game has, our friend Jason, and it was an item known as Mirror of the Past. And we were discussing one of the most influential characters in the Forgotten Realms, Elemenster, the greatest wizard that will ever live, and is pretty much exists purely as plot armor in most games and appearances that they are. But Damien gave us an idea. If you were to pick up this item called Mirror of the Past, which gives you random information about a chosen figure, showing them the moment of their death, that is a thing that can start an entire quest line. Or, that's even deeper role playing to give it to your player to say, okay, how do I react to this information? It's like receiving a vision of like the prime minister or the president dying or the assassination of like Congress or something. Hell, there's even an idea too. Maybe the Lords of Waterdeep are all, deep sixed. Okay, how, why, when? Because the mirror is completely random. But it also goes beyond that too, because you have to look at items that can impact the game too. Like, I like to think roleplay focused items are fun. Like, one of the items I love to give out because it always ends in some goofy shenanigans. It's an alchemy jug. What the hell is that? An alchemy jug is a jug of essentially think of for those of you listening in Canada, think of like the Circle K Max milk. That has been a thing for decades. Circle K's milk jugs, or if you're one of our United States kind of listeners, 7-Eleven, like a juice jug. So this juice jug can produce mead, ale, vinegar, or my favorite, mayonnaise. So I love handing these out. They randomly go through a cave or wherever, and they find one of these alchemy jugs. And the joke I almost always pull is like, you pick up this item and suddenly you smell ranch dressing. And they're like, what the hell am I going to do with ranch dressing? I'm like, well, in a pinch, you could eat it. Or if you're in the desert of Aeronach, you can make water with this. You could trade with bands that necessarily don't have water. Or in the most unusual case, let's say you get transported to one of the other realms like Dark Sun, you have the capacity to make water. You have just changed the economy of that entire world. And, it could be Defiler magic. Maybe people are hunting you down for a jug that makes ranch sauce. That's an entire narrative thing.
And
go ahead.
Like, and that's actually kind of cool because like there's a lot that you can do with this if you're creative. Because it's not just the individual liquids that it produces, but like, okay, yeah, it produces mayonnaise. It also produces oil and vinegar. Yes, you can only do one of these things a day, but if salad dressing is ever a need, you have that on hand. It produces honey, beer, like a whole assortment of different things that you could use in a variety of situations.
Yeah, because like, let's say you need to make oil, for example. You can make 5 gallons. That is not an insignificant amount. Let's say you booby trap the area around your camp with oil. I'm going to make whatever encounter happens during watch, because it always happens. They're going to need to make a dexterity save. Why? Maybe they slip and fall and you hear it. And like, yes, it's the world's most ghetto discount alarm spell, but it works and it's clever. Like, or, one of my other players, let's call him Steve. He had an item and it was like a compass or something like that. And it had the capacity to know where you always are. And I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to use this in his game or in our game? And they were trying to find this royalty that had been kidnapped and this person they had to bring to justice. So I'm like, yeah, you know exactly where they are, but good luck getting in. Like, it was the most guarded secret cultist lair because, it's always guarded. But
Yeah,
they knew exactly where they were going. And again, that's just using random stuff out of their like inventories.
Mhm.
And that's what I want it to be. Now, sometimes to make loot more impactful, I love to do goofy role play moments. And for example, in my other game I'm playing with my other friends, I swear to God, this game is cursed. Every time we try to play on a Thursday night, either one of my guys isn't feeling well, they have kids, which is, one of the friends in that game had said, "You know who the big bad is of D&D?" I'm like, "What?" Like, when you're adults, it's scheduling.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Thursdays is like my cursed day, but whatever. So what I did is I brought them into the Feywild. And I'm not going to lie, Damon, this is where I got the idea where the Feywild is this shenanigans of whose line is it anyway, where the points are made up and they don't matter. What I did is I had them deal with a Fey merchant, and they're like, "Oh, hello. What can I do for you?" And I just picked random items. I'm like, "Here's 2 cool bows." And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you this bow that deals radiant damage and it's awesome." And the merchant's like, "Okay, well, it is all yours, my friend, but I require but one thing. What is the first memory of you laughing?" And my players were caught off guard. They're like, "What?"
Oh, that's mean.
"Oh yeah, like, I want your memories." Or, "What was the first time you ever felt safe?" "I want that memory." And because my players they were in the Feywild and only one of them was through it and they didn't catch on to it. And I asked my player to introduce themselves and like, "Hello, my name is so-and-so." Like, "Oh, you just gave me your true name. Thanks for that." Um, and that's the wonderful thing is now they have this awesome item, but now they owe this fairy a favor. Is it ever going
Yeah.
to come to screw them over? Truth be told, probably not, but I want that paranoia in their background. But also at the same time, maybe they have an ally. Why did that particular Fae want that memory? Because the Fae work in a completely different morality system, whereas, in real life, there's black, white, gray shades of morality, whereas in the Feywild, it may be purple, ham, and lobster. You don't know because they're so alien. And that's the cool thing about making loot different in different environments too. Like in any sort of fantasy setting, yeah, I mean, a magic sword is a magic sword, but you pick it up in the Feywild, maybe it does something different, or the rules to it change when it changes planes of existence too. And there's so much more to that as well. And loot isn't always something magical. Like we play a variety of different games. Like we play stuff like Shadowrun, Star Trek, BattleTech, stuff like that. And when you think about loot in those games, I think a really good example of making loot more impactful is actually something, Damien, you game mastered for me when you played BattleTech. A big part of that universe is salvage.
Yeah.
And, in the world of BattleTech, to give a very high level overview, certain technologies have been lost. So if we defeat a group of mercenaries and they happen to have salvage that would be useful and compatible with our battle mechs, like, I don't know, a targeting computer, a command control unit, target acquisition gear, tag, so maybe that makes your missiles more effective. Now your unit has an artillery strike. Okay, but maybe I can't use that. All right, you can sell that. So that loot is now impactful. You can't use it, but Wolf's Dragoons could certainly use it, and they're willing to pay top sea bills for it.
Yeah. That is definitely one like it's as a GM, that's a fun way to do it. Another thing I like to do to kind of bring it a little bit more away from the mechanical end of loot to more of the narrative again. Okay, so this is something that I'm pulling from Baldur's Gate 3. So when you're in the first act, you're killing a bunch of goblins. One of them that you kill, and I've always come across this goblin, so I don't think it's random, has a drawing on them that looks like it was like super crudely done. Basically, it's positioned as it's from their kid.
Okay, I don't know about this. Please
Yeah.
go on.
It's basically just like kind of a throwaway thing. I don't think there's anything actually that develops from it narratively. At least there's nothing that I've seen about it. But it's just like a little throwaway piece of loot that is really worthless. So let's take this idea. And what if instead, your party, your players are fighting a group of bandits. They kill the bandits, the good guys win, yay. On one of the bandits, though, there's an unsent letter that's addressed to, somebody in Luskin. Now, this letter, it's on a bandit. It could be from somebody who was killed by these bandits. Maybe it's from the bandit themselves to a loved one. How is that going to affect, like looking at it as a player, how is that going to affect your character?
Yeah, because
what are you going to do from that?
Yeah, because like a lot of things in these role-playing games, we automatically assume the people we're fighting, just because they engage us, they're evil, they have to die. Sometimes, you're that meme. Are we the bad guys? Like, there's other adventuring groups in the world, and maybe these bandits, maybe you just caught them at an inopportune moment, and maybe they're fighting to survive, and maybe they're trying to steal enough money or resources to bring back home to wherever their village is, or maybe they were forced into a life of crime against their will. Like, it's interesting because, that adds narrative depth, and that's a real interesting role-play moment. Like, maybe if your character feels really remorseful, maybe they take that letter, they carry it to the next town, they throw it in a mailbox and make sure it gets to where it has to go. Or maybe the character's a paladin and says, while your partner was committing great evil or thievery or whatever, they had this on them and it felt appropriate for you to have this. While I don't expect you to forgive me, you should know you were in their thoughts in their last days. And maybe that's a whole new quest, because maybe that person that you slain comes back as a revenant. They've got 1 year to kick your ass. But maybe there's a quest there. If there's a paladin and a cleric, maybe like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have killed so-and-so. Maybe they were such a nice person. We just got them on a bad day. It's kind of like that movie Falling Down, where everyone is one bad day from doing something horrible and you just wanted McDonald's breakfast. But if you come back and maybe like, okay, we've got this guy chasing us, maybe we can raise him and bring him back and say, look, we didn't have to do this, but your letter convinced us this was wrong. And that's the wonderful thing about finding things on defeated enemies or just loot. There's opportunities to layer in different sub stories, because as much as everybody here loves a good dungeon crawl, a good story's better. Like, we're always going to remember, oh, I hit that critical and I did that and this, that, and the other thing. But what you're going to remember are the little moments that make, in some ways, downtime and story moments can be more important than fighting the big bad evil guy. And I think that's why we play these games, because we all want to be engaged in a story that means something and carries us somewhere. But speaking of carrying us somewhere, we're being carried out to another break, kicking and screaming. So we will be back once again right here on the Spellbook, only on CFRU 93.3 and later rebroadcast on thisweekingeek.net, one of Canada's longest running podcasts. I'm Mike, that's Damien, and this is I Don't Know.
In the know, in the know.
Hi, this is Joel Gibb from the Hidden Cameras, and you're listening to CFRU 93.3 FM.
In the know, in the know, in the know.
welcome back to the Spellbook right here on 93.3 CFRU Guelph Community Radio as we talk about making loot more impactful. Now, throughout the first half of the show, we've been talking about things that you could really use at any level of play to give your loot a little bit more oomph and, with some anecdotes and stuff like that. Um, One of the things that I kind of wanted to look at as well is loot for higher level players and loot that isn't gold pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
because I always find money is the loot that I never want to give out. But then again, I wonder if that's a weakness as me as a game master where I haven't figured out economies yet. But
um,
yeah,
I don't know. I kind of feel you. Like gold as loot is to me just kind of feels bland. Like there are times where it is like applicable and it's narratively sound. Like you raid a dragon's hoard, there's gonna be a bunch of gold there. It's it's part and parcel with the game. Um, but and actually, I'm gonna use another little anecdote from the game that I'm playing currently with Mike. Outside of game, I approached Mike with this, and I just straight up said, like, one of after this current mission that we're on for a specific archfey, the thing that Tinker is going to ask for, instead of like a monetary reward for them, from them, is the permission to come and go freely from their domain in a small piece of land uh, that they can have, type deal. For me, this is like me planning for my character's future and what I want for my character, because eventually I kind of want them to build like a little hidden workshop there. It's going to be a whole thing. But things like that, like land, titles, um, followers, and services can kind of be grouped into the umbrella of loot because, like, if you really break it down, all loot is, especially when you're looking at it mechanically, is resource.
yeah, because like I think that's one thing some people kind of miss when it comes to putting together their own D&D kind of narratives is loot is not just stuff. It can be land, it can be favors, it can be NPCs. I
Oh,
mean, in Shadowrun, for example, contacts are a very big part of how
yeah.
that game works mechanically. Maybe you know a street doc or a talismonger or a Mr. Johnson who happens to like working with you in particular. That's really good to have. And sometimes, all right, awesome. I want the Panther assault cannon and the armor piercing discarding Sabot rounds. Awesome. But how would you like someone who's a wage slave who really hates their job and can mysteriously get you access when you need it? For a price, of course, but still, now you have a new narrative NPC. Your game master's going to love you for asking for something that isn't just, all right, fine, it does this much damage, it does this, whatever. I love the idea of adding things. And that's something I've never had a player ask for is like, I want a home base. Normally, I just give you, like in our games, our group is in a fictional place I call Cambridge. There is a real Cambridge, obviously, close to us locally and in England. Um,
Cambridge doesn't exist.
yeah, it's a fictional place. I'm sorry. But it's also a location. But you guys have never really, I mean, obviously, when you went to the barracks, you never really had a chance, like, what does your room look like? What do you keep your stuff in a footlocker? Do you sleep with the rest of the troops? What is your thing? But you've never invested in property. And in older editions of D&D, you were expected to have land holdings. You were expected to have followers. You were expected to, as your character grew in level and power, you also grew in responsibility
Yeah,
as well.
because like I think it was level 4, like in older editions. Level 4 was considered name level. And that's when you started to actually make a name for yourself. Like level 10, that's when, yeah, you're at that point, you're expected, you need to have like some sort of a keep or something like that. And yeah, it got really complicated in simulation past that.
And it's so cool. Like one of the things I'm learning as I keep playing, like I'm playing a game with my friend Nick, and he is a very old school player. Like he started in first edition, then him and his friends started moving on to AD&D second edition, eventually third ed. And I'm learning just how the game functioned. And when I start to think how I want to craft my world, it's been so interesting, not just as a creative person, because like I'm a writer on the side. It's really making these worlds come to life and having places like I know with our game in particular with Steve and Jason and our other friends, I want to make Cambridge feel alive, and I've encouraged you guys to, if there's a building, name it. If there is an NPC, okay, maybe you happen to know the person who owns the bed and breakfast, stuff like that. And that's in essence loot too, because that's a safe place, or that is a place for someplace for narrative to happen. In your particular instance, your loot you earned very early on, you started working with the local blacksmith.
Yep.
So you start establishing, okay, what does the economy look like? What does supply line look like? How do relationships build? And now you've got a connection to the blacksmith. You have our friend Jason has a lesser connection to the general store, and our friend Jason has sort of the restaurant in the area, sort of on our good side, because they help this bard who is a little too enthusiastic get home one evening and make sure no one took advantage of them, like either rob them or do something else. And that's important. That's impactful. It's not just me throwing, okay, here's 200 gold, here's a couple of gems, and I don't know, a candelabra, it's worth $500 or something. And again, like, you're right. Money is so boring. Now, that does change from game to game, be it like Cyberpunk, Shadowrun, even Star Wars being paid in credits. Yeah, that can help. But, Republic credits don't work out here. Only money. That's important. And you have to figure that out too. Like, how does loot impact your economy? How does it impact social status? Because even, for example, okay, let's say you raid someone's house, you find a set of nice clothes. You probably don't want to be wearing that in the lower city of Baldur's Gate, because someone's going to thinking, hey, you've got money. Or, like, there's just so many little things you need to be considering when you're constructing your worlds, making your loot tables be something so much more interesting. And I love the idea of just giving stuff that makes the world feel lived in, alive. Like now I have to wait till you forget about this conversation so I can do the whole lost letter thing, because that is such a clever friggin' idea. And again, it's when you're doing these games, and it's something that I've kind of noticed as I've gotten older, I demand more from my fiction, and I demand more from the time I'm spending with people. Because let's be real, some of us are in our 30s and 40s and even older in our group's case with our friend Ray. We want to create something that is lived in, something that is authentic. And it's not something you can necessarily get from a video game. And while Baldur's Gate is great and everything, there's a definite start and there's a definite end. Yeah. So the odds for growth, unless you're modding stuff into the game, are somewhat limited. But when it comes to creating a narrative that can evolve in the moment, that's really rewarding. And you could use tools like World Anvil to keep kind of notes of everything. I don't I've got a pretty good memory, and I improv things, and I don't think many people in our group catch on. Maybe you, because you've known me for like 20 years and you probably know some of my tells. But for the most part, I like to think our world is fairly cohesive, and when a person reacts in a certain way, you understand why. And now that we're introducing things and items that are now becoming plot items, that's really impactful to your players. And when you mention higher level stuff, it gets so much more interesting because this is where a game can become really unbalanced.
Oh, yeah.
Because if I randomly hand you an item like the deck of many things, don't ever use the deck of many things. I'm tempted to try it in one of our games. Just I need to have my own story. I have to know how Looney Tunes BS can this happen. But if I wanted to limit that and it's still just as dangerous, the Ring of Three Wishes or something like that, or in another game like say Battletech. Okay, here's a 100-ton salvage dire wolf from Clan Wolf. Okay, now your tonnage outweighs almost entire lances. Or in Shadowrun, hey, here's Delta grade cyberware. You're virtually Neo from the Matrix. Okay, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah, like that's the thing is like your loot that you're giving out has to it
Scale.
unfortunately, yeah, it has to scale with the power creep of the adversaries and challenges that the party is facing. Now, again, as we've said, not all of the loot needs to be that way, but enough of it to help the characters and the players feel powerful. Um, because yes, we are here for the narrative, we are here for the story. There is even in that a little bit of the power fantasy as well, and I know we kind of keep flip flopping between those two, but I don't know. In my opinion, and you're free to disagree with me. It's kind of just as important because like we want our characters to feel strong. We want our characters to feel like heroes. Kind of depending on the setting. If you're playing like a super grim, gritty, like you could die at any second type setting, something like Mothership, it's a little different, but most TTRPG.
Yeah, because like you think about loot in a game like say Aliens, for example, which is awesome. But okay, cool. Here's an M56 smart gun. Here's a pulse rifle. What loot can you really get in that game when you really kind of break it down other than resources, information, or maybe a ship to get home? Like
Yeah,
there's nothing in the
resources, weapons, plot items, and allies/meat shields.
Yeah, like it's not something that's like super easy to just, hey, here's your cool thing, party on. Just it doesn't work. And that sucks because you want to have loot that, maintains momentum, but scaling is so hard because it's something you literally have to sit there and plan out. You have to look at, how am I going to do this? What is the idea here?
How powerful do you want your players to be?
Yeah.
Is a big one. Because if you want your players to feel like, demigods walking on the face of Toril, cool. Give them the high caliber weapons when they reach level 10 plus. Give them the stuff that's going to make them feel like they could take on the god. If you want them to, be concerned that, whether or not they're going to make it through the next encounter, dial that back a bit.
Exactly. Now, speaking of the next encounter, we're about to face a deadly one right now. The ad break! We'll be back, guys, right after this, only on CFRU 93.3. I'm Mike, that's Damien. This is the Spellbook, and this is definitely not the Spellbook. We'll be back right after this.
Hi, everybody. This is Lee Fields. You're listening to CFRU. You heard me. CFRU.
Welcome back to the Spellbook right here on 93.3 CFRU Guelph Community Radio as we talk about making your loot more impactful.
I think loot is different for each genre. of games. Like I've briefly
Mhm.
touched upon BattleTech, Shadowrun, but what about we briefly touched on this. You think about a thing like Aliens, for example. What do you do? Like even for Star Trek, like you're not just going to find the Defiant randomly in like a crash shipyard. Well, probably not, but you're not going to randomly like loot and Star Trek. Okay, maybe new technologies like I don't know, quantum torpedoes or some BS like that, or maybe like a Borg, I don't know, alcove or some stuff. So
I
it's like, what do you do in like super high tech settings, for example, where tech effectively magic, but it can break the game?
So what I like to do with stuff like that, um, is, and I even kind of like to do this in like high fantasy as well. Um, Information and schematics. So like
Okay.
schematics, like for for like a high magic campaign, schematics might be a description of a high level spell,
Okay.
or maybe a high level like the the only scroll of its type that was written down type deal.
Okay.
Because like with something like schematics or and whatnot, yes, it's not necessarily useful in the moment, but
It's something you have to work towards.
you have to work towards it, and it's something that helps push the narrative forward while you know providing a benefit. Maybe the players decide, you know what, we don't want to spend the time gathering the resources to build this. We're gonna sell this to the powers that be. But we're gonna sell it to the Republic. We're gonna sell it to the Rebel Alliance. The Federation, the Empire, whatever they may choose. Well, that then leads to potentially other story hooks. Maybe the person they sold it to, they didn't think it was going to be one of the bad guys. It was just some merchant they knew. All of a sudden, there's rumors of this new weapon that the Empire has. Sounds strangely like some schematics your party looted a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, like maybe you find a repository or schematics to how to create artificial kyber crystals, and now some imperial remnant lunatic has the capacity, like, hey, if I can make this happen, I could make a new Death Star. I don't have the resources right now, but now I have the know-how. Now you've set apart in motion. Maybe this imperial warlord is now starting to gather scientists. He starts kidnapping people from the new republic, the corporate sector, stuff like that. Now you may have inadvertently started a new port of the Civil War in
Yeah.
Star Wars because you needed a couple dollars. I mean, one thing I was thinking about this, because this is something I'm noticing in a lot of the fantasy games that I've participated in, and it's something I'm trying not to be a jerk about, but material components. And this is something you and I worked with, and I'm so glad we did. Like, for example, loot, one of your spells requires a component, a pearl worth at least 100 GP. And I think we've talked about this previously before
Yep.
on the show, where that's how your identify spell works.
Yep.
And I had a conversation with my friend Nick about this because we thought the pearl was consumed. And turns out it's not. You just have to have it. So what I did in our game, for example, is I made sure you would find pearls and diamonds because, pardon me, you guys, I think you have access to level 3 spells, at least one. One of those.
I do not. I actually don't get even level 2 spells until next level, which is
Oh,
one of the
wow.
reasons why I asked the question that I did and asked the GM in your Discord. Because
But
I'm assuming that's coming up soon.
yes, exactly. So one of the things I want to prepare is one very powerful spell at low levels is Revivify, which allows you to get someone up from death, because you don't get access to resurrection till significantly later in the game. And that's another thing too with loot. you can give items that will mitigate certain things, but when it comes to material components, like Revivify is not cheap. Or if you want to cast Hero's Feast, you have to have a bowl. It's worth like $1,000
Yeah.
to make sure you can cast the spell. And Jason in a previous game did that, and I'm like, "How did you get that?" And they're like, I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'm just gonna let it go because we only have so much time here," and it worked out fine. But handing out material components, especially rare things, can be really important because certain spells will consume items like
Yeah.
diamonds
Yeah.
or stuff like that. Or one thing I'm really going to have to start enforcing this is with any of the spellcasters in our group. You already have this covered because your spellcasting focus, for example, is your arcane firearm.
Well, it's
But
either my gun or my tools. I can
yeah,
use either or.
so you have that capacity, but other people in our group, like wizards and sorcerers, like, okay, you're casting that spell. How? And loot can be, maybe you get a better spell casting focus, like maybe you
Yeah.
get a better wand or a staff or something like that. Because in every game I play, and I'm definitely noticing it now, is okay, I cast that. Okay, what's the verbal and semantic components of that? Now, I'm not going to make you wave your hands around in real life and, chant gibberish at me. But if you do give me gibberish or something that sounds powerful, I'm probably going to reward you with heroic inspiration for that. And again, that's loot because I want you to find the cool item. I want you to
Yeah.
improve what you have. Like you and I have discussed about the items you're collecting along the way because you're in the Feywild. Like, okay, could I talk to an Eladrin for a piece of their body or a piece of the wood so I can start to figure out what to do with that?
Oh,
And
I
again,
already have ideas.
yeah, and it's such a simple ask, but it's so impactful because it can now change the trajectory of how your character moves forward. And other things you could ask, like, again, maybe you're asking favors. Like maybe a piece of loot could be like, okay, I need to get to someplace. I need to get the Chult, which is the island of dinosaurs and the Tomb of Horrors. Basically a big tourist destination on Faerun. But you have to get there. So maybe loot can, in your instance, could be finding a pirate, a ferryman, maybe a powerful wizard, maybe going to Candle Keep and saying, "Hey, I need to get here and I don't got a lot of time. So can you teleport me? Can you fly me? Can you use travel via plant or something? Is there an option here?" And that can be something too, because you always want to be using your loot to push something forward, to make something exciting happen, or give someone a moment to think. So as we begin to close out the show, we probably got about 5 to 7 minutes here. I don't know. What are some of the most impactful pieces of loot you've ever given out or seen used in a game?
Ooh. So a lot of the ones that I like to give out, I've kind of covered before. It's usually more character centric, either specifically something like things having to do with the character's backstory, or background specifically. So I've had guild artisans, like people with the guild artisan background in games before, and one of the things that I've liked to do, and it's kind of helped, maybe propel the plot forward at times, is you find a shipment that has the you defeated the bandits or goblins or kobolds, whatever it was. You find a small crate that has your guild's logo on it. That's something that can be returned for maybe a reward. Maybe returning that makes it so that you as a guild artisan, that covers your guild dues because for the next 6 months because it was that important type deal. Or the ranger that hasn't really been seeing a lot of loot, they get a new bow that has you know a one a day minor effect on it. something to give them something a little, a little bit more. How about yourself?
I think as a game master, one of the best pieces of loot I gave out was allies. And I had it set up in a situation where I had my players negotiating with several tribes of warring were creatures, were ravens, bears, rats, wolves. They had to agree to how to get these groups to work together to fight Strahd von Zarevich. And it was like, okay, well, we want this and we want that. So I had my players walk through the group and negotiate different things. And their reward for good role playing was, okay, the were ravens will attack from the air, but the were bears will act as meat shields to make sure you can storm Castle Ravenloft. So you have capacity. But the were rats don't like how you dealt with them. They may be actively sabotaging your efforts, not necessarily selling you out to Strahd, but, loose lips sink ships. So maybe Strahd has a little bit of a heads up before you're coming. And that felt really impactful to me because, again, this was a completely missable encounter, but they role played it so well. Like, I want to reward you. I want to reward that you help the werebears recover their matriarch, because in bear society, I decided the women are some of the most important. It's not the men fight, but the women lead, if that makes any sense. And that's how they solve that issue. Or the were ravens, like, you helped return the sacred shiny. Now we owe you at least bare minimum parlay, but more than likely we owe you a favor.
Damn,
And
I
I
need to
thought
make
that
a
was-
were-raven friend now.
Oh my God. I can't wait till you guys get to see some of my more shenanigan-y stuff. I'm looking forward to it. But that's pretty much going to do it for this edition of the Spellbook right here on CFRU. If people want to get involved with the show, Damien, how would they go about doing that?
Well, we have a perfectly accessible email at thespellbookshow@gmail.com, and both Mike and I are on social media.
Yep,
You can
so
find
make
us on
sure-
Blue Sky.
Yep. Make sure to find us on Blue Sky, where we most often post. You can find me across most social media as Birdman ODST or Birdman Guelph on Blue Sky. Pretty easy to find. I'm usually posting some nonsense, usually cats, or stuff like that. Damien, you occasionally stream on Twitch.
Yep, and I can be found most places under the handle Magical Hack.
Wonderful stuff. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this edition of the Spellbook this week. Next week, we're going to be talking... Actually, what are we talking about next week?
Next week is making low-level players feel more powerful.
All right there, guys. So once again, thank you for listening to us here on the Spellbook. You can also find episodes over on thisweekingeek.net not too long after this broadcast. We have 20 plus episodes in the can right now with lots more this summer. So get out there, roll them bones, make some friends. And once again, a big shout out to the Guelph Nerds Discord. Hopefully you will join us. So until next time, we have been...
I have been Damien.
I have been Mike the Birdman saying... be excellent to each other, and we'll catch you guys again next time right here on thisweekingeek.net and CFRU 93.3 FM Guelph Community Radio.
It's not enough. We have a gallery of villains to look out for, but now we could be infiltrated by a shape changer. I can't even tell if any of you are acting strange because you've been replaced or because this group is full of weirdos.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Spellbook. If you happen to have any comments or suggestions, please send us an email at thespellbookshow@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're hungry for more, you can find Mike at thisweekingeek.net, covering a variety of nerdy topics, and Damien on YouTube at Magical Hack Makes for more TTRPG conversation.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.